Sergeant Chuck Kaufman, United States Army, Vietnam. I interviewed Chuck in Spartanburg, South Carolina, March 22nd, 2007. I made several trips to Spartanburg over the years, and Chuck was one of the Vietnam veterans I met and interviewed. What a great guy. You're going to love his story, folks. And I just so enjoy sharing these stories with you. You know, they're my eyes and ears to the doorway of the past, and we're learning so much about World War II, Korea, Vietnam, even Iraq and Afghanistan, so through these veterans. Chuck he actually enlisted, was in Vietnam in 68 and 69, served mainly along the Mekong Delta, that's where he fought. And he received 2 air medals for all the helicopter assaults that he did. Chuck was 11 Bravo Infantry all the way. He went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for his basic training, and then on to Fort Lewis, Washington for advanced infantry training. Also went to Fort Ord for leadership training. So like I said, he was a sergeant and just a great man. Just really did it all, saw it all. You can see it in his eyes. You see the emotion there, and he's very proud of what he did and of his country too. I'd like to thank John Penn for making it possible for you to watch Chuck Kaufman's story. John, love you, brother. John's a truck driver, and he gets out and about, and he's been a great support of my work. And he's the reason why, one of the reasons why I'm able to bring these stories. So John, can't thank you enough, brother. I love you, and I just am so grateful for you. God blesses you for helping me, and telling these stories are so important. And thank you for supporting our country and our veterans, and just good to have you with me, John. God bless you, brother. Folks, I'm going to go to Nashville in August to sit down in a studio. I'm going to be interviewed like I've interviewed all these veterans for 21 years. I've got someone that's going to interview me, and I'm going to be able to tell my story of how I've told all these stories for 21 years. It's going to be a great project. I would really highly encourage some of you that have been wanting to help support my work to really help towards this project. Something I'm wanting to do, I'm hoping to do, and that's the goal right now. So if you'd like to donate to that, there's information in the video description, which is below the video. A lot of you don't know that. Click on more, or it may all appear there, whether you're on a phone or on a computer. But there's information. If you can't find that, look in the comments section of every video or on my website, larrycappetto.com. I would really greatly appreciate your help. Capturing Courage on Camera, so appropriately titled. And I thank my God that I can serve Him and my country through the lens of my camera. So many of you are out there. I just wish I could meet every one of you. Okay, thank you again, John Penn, for making it possible for others to hear Chuck Kaufman's story. Really, Chuck, I salute you, brother. I know you're still with us, and I hope you're doing well. And I'm just thank you for sitting down with me and telling me your story. Now we can share it with others, and we can learn about this. So get it into the hands of our young people, folks. Voices of History Radio is on the air. KVOH, Voices of History Radio. Get that into the hands of our young people. I'm serious. It really needs to be their living history in the palm of their hands. They can download the app for free and listen to it. And I encourage you to take a listen to Voices of History Radio. So much blood, sweat, and tears has gone into that project also. So, okay, that's it for now. I will talk to you in my next broadcast. God bless you. '68, '69?
Correct.
Did you enlist?
Yeah, sort of.
Oh boy, okay.
It's kind of a long story. I was a junior in college at the time, and I dropped out to work, and in those days the draft was coming pretty fast and furious, so I went for my physical. While I was up there, I met a friend of mine from high school that didn't pass the physical, and of course I did. And he had a friend, an uncle I think, that was a commander in one of the Army Reserve units, and he said he'd been saving a space for him, so I might be able to get that space. So I talked to the guy, and he said, yeah, you know, when you're ready to go, let me know. And I didn't hear from the guy, and I finally got my draft notice, and I go, oh my God, I'm going to go to Vietnam. You know, nobody wanted to do that. So I said, the only thing I could get into, the Army was the only thing you could enlist in. It was 3 years, everything else was 4 years. So I enlisted in the Army, and the next day after I got my orders to go into the Army, I got a call from a guy and said, come on up, your spot's all ready. But it was too late, I was already in. And so then when I went into basic training, they said because I had some college, I might be qualified to go to officer candidate school. And so I said, okay, let's do that. And of course, I gave up my school that I enlisted for, and they put me in the infantry.
Was it the 9th Infantry Division?
Not at that point, no, just infantry qualified. And then because I had 3 years, I never went to officer training school for some reason. They never assigned me. And I went to Germany for 14 months. I was there in the 8th Infantry Division over there. And then a little nervous for some reason.
It's okay,
but because I had enlisted, I had enough time after the 14 months to still go to Vietnam, and all the guys that got drafted that went to Germany got to go home. So it's kind of funny, but the other thing that's funny about it is I always said if I could go to Vietnam and come out without a scratch, the infantry would be the only way to go, just to say I was really in it, and that's pretty much what happened. But when I got out is when they instituted the lottery, and my name was number 1 on the lottery, so I was going no matter what happened, it seemed like.
So how old are you now?
I'm 61 now.
So back then you were what, 19?
22, I think I was, 21, 22
Were you
then.
trained as an infantryman? Is that what your MOS was?
Yeah, I went to basic training in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and then I went to a leadership school at Fort Ord, and then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington for advanced infantry training.
So let's talk about the first time you went to Vietnam. What do you remember about arriving in country, smells, the sights? I mean, was it what you thought it was going to be when you actually got off the plane, or however you were?
Yeah, well, I took 60-day leave before I went over there, so I was a little nervous getting ready to go over there. And just before I went over there, which was March of '68, there was a big bombing in Cam Ranh Bay, and it was all on the news, and I was like, oh my God, you know, it's supposed to be a pretty safe place. And so you're pretty apprehensive, you don't know what to expect. And of course it was hot and miserable. And I ended up going into what they call the Mobile Riverine Force, which was in some ways kind of unique. We lived on ships in the Mekong Delta, and then we'd take trips out into the Delta area in rice paddies. And so we'd go out for anywhere from a few days to maybe a few weeks, and then we'd come back on and go back on the ships, have a little air conditioning from time to time then. But you're pretty apprehensive, and you don't know what's going to happen. And I was, you know, when you're in Germany and you've been drinking beer and stuff like that and eat a lot of potatoes over there, I weighed about 200 pounds when I went over there. And one of my first trips out, I got stuck in the mud. I thought I was never going to get out of that place alive, and I thought they were going to have to get a helicopter to pull me out of the mud. I was about waist deep in mud and out of shape and everything else. And but when I left there, I came out of there about 160 pounds. I could walk on water pretty much at that point.
So you're over in Vietnam. What unit are you assigned to then? Who are you fighting with?
9th Infantry Division, 360th Division.
And you were using helicopters to go in and out of landing areas? Is that what
We did, but we had, I forgot what they call them now, but there's little boats with a ramp on the front. We would get on those and go out and go down the river and go in, land on those, and then sometimes we'd go in helicopters.
Who are you fighting over there?
A little bit of Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army sometimes.
And tell me about maybe what you remember about the first time you engaged the enemy, where you were and what happened.
It seemed like a lot of it was just like sniper fire and things like that. There weren't a lot of what you call major battles, like, you know, you think about, in fact, they told me when I went in there, when I first got to the ship, they said, they said no U.S. Army group has ever been overrun by the enemy in the South. They said we can put enough artillery around you that nobody's going to get in there. So that kind of gave me a little confidence that, you know, we got some support. So my opinion of being in the infantry down there was that the infantry was basically designed to draw fire. And then at that point, when we got some action going, we bring in the jets or bring in the artillery and those things to hopefully wipe everybody out.
Just tell me just quickly about the Mekong Delta, what that was.
That's a miserable place. It's a lot like South Louisiana. Rice paddies, I can remember wading through rice paddies that were about ankle deep and so many leeches in it. You had to, every time you got to a dike, you'd have to push them off of you like that because they were, I mean, the things were like that long, and just the water just working with them. So that was a lot of fun.
That'd be miserable.
Yeah. It was so hot you could sit in the sun and watch the sweat come through your pants and then steam off and evaporate.
So are you fighting with a platoon of guys? You said sniper fire. Are you on you said you're on a landing craft or a boat of some sort? And did you guys use the Huey helicopters though? I mean, going in and out?
Yeah, we did what they call eagle flights. And one of the things interesting, probably the lucky to be here alive today, but we used to fly in 10 helicopters at a time, which is called an eagle flight, and fly into certain areas that they thought there might be activity. And most of the time we weren't getting any action, so one of our commanding officers came up with a brilliant idea that let's not go in with 10, let's go in with 5, and we have a better chance of drawing some fire that way. We went in with 5 helicopters, and we started taking heavy fire coming in to the landing zone. And I was getting ready to jump out of the helicopter, and I was standing on the skid of the plane, of the helicopter, and just before, I was just about to jump, and the guy behind me jumped over me. And when he did that, I hesitated, and I looked up for a second. I hesitated, and the helicopter went off like that. And I was hanging from the skid. I looked down at those palm trees, and I said, if I fall here, I'm never getting out of here. But what happened, the co-pilot got shot through the ankle, and I mean right in the joint, and he was really hurting, and the door gunner helped pull me in. I got back in the helicopter, and we went back to the base camp, and of course he was bleeding pretty bad, and then the lieutenant was in the helicopter next to him. He got shot in the neck, and it looked like somebody dumped a 5-gallon jug of blood in that helicopter, and of course he was dead. And so some of the guys got on the ground, but luckily none of them got hurt that got on the ground, and it turned out they were surrounded by an NVA battalion or something like that, and those guys disappeared in the middle of the night, but we poured in a ton of artillery and everything else in on that deal. But I can still remember hanging from that helicopter.
Well, what are you carrying around for a weapon? M16?
M16, yeah.
So are you incidents like that happened a lot, or was that just your tour was a year? I'm assuming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just as far as the tour in Vietnam, I mean, I hear a lot of things when guys go to Vietnam, when they went to Vietnam, that counting down your days to go home was a big deal. Is that something that everybody did?
Oh, yeah.
And when you arrive in country for the first time, you're called a newbie.
Oh, yeah.
You got all these names, and people maybe, did you experience stuff like that? Or?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Everybody's counting down, and of course when you're new, everybody figures you're worthless. And a little bit like in that movie Platoon that Charlie Sheen was in. That's a fairly realistic movie, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, and you change over time, because like I said, I was very heavy when I went in there for my size, and you get trimmed down real fast. You know, you're sweating like crazy. And I think the big contrast is leaving there. We're sitting on kind of a tarmac waiting for our plane to come and take us home, and you can just tell a guy that's been a veteran in Vietnam for a year. I mean, you're suntanned, you're lean and mean, and you got to kind of look in your eye like, I've been there and done that. And the plane comes in, and all the new guys come in, and they've all got brand new uniforms, and of course our uniforms are just faded away to nothing. And we were one of the first groups to come back in fatigues instead of dress uniforms, so we were in our jungle fatigues, and you see these guys are all pale, you know, and we're going, look at those guys, and we're getting out of here. So big contrast.
Do you feel a lot of times in combat, or a younger person might feel invincible, or like nothing can happen to me type attitude, and then you get the baptism under fire, as it were? Did that ever happen to you or those around you? I mean,
I saw two different things happen there. I can remember getting sniper fire, and a guy that was carrying our machine gun threw the machine gun in the air and jumped in the river to protect himself. And we're going, you know, the M60 machine gun is like your main firepower in a squad. You got to have that guy doing it, and the guy just panicked. And another time, a group ahead of us walked into a 50 caliber machine gun. If you ever heard one of those things go off, you can just tell it's a boom, 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 real deep sound, and one of the guys got killed in front. And so we were laying against a rice paddy, and I remember all I could think of, to me it was like a football game. Let's get in there and get those guys. And I virtually stepping on the heads of some of these guys who were just like this, you know, just I'm scared. And it's like, to me, you can't lay down. You're going to be dead for sure. You got to fight and get out of this thing. And that's the way I always felt like the way it should be.
When you hear a lot of things about Vietnam. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm producing this, is to kind of bring out some of these myths or things that you hear. But how did you feel about being in Vietnam? Were you ever conscious of fighting for God and country, or was it just a matter of survival for you?
Well, it's a little bit of both, I think. I know I mentioned when I left Germany, I had a 60-day leave, so I had a lot of time to goof off and think about it. And I know my sister was saying she had some connections in Canada, might be able to go up there. But, excuse me. But I thought, you know, I can't go to Canada and come back here again. And this is my country, so I'm going.
That's good.
So I did, and here I am.
How about any of your friends at the time, or people that you knew, or did you get close to people, and then were any of them wounded or killed during your tour over there?
You never really quite know unless you know, they're killed on the spot, because typically they're dusted off in a helicopter and you never really hear for sure. I know it's a lot different than you think when you're in training. In fact, it was Christmas, because we actually got, they give you a turkey dinner even in combat. It sounds amazing. We were sitting on kind of an outpost there we had boats on the shoreline, and then we had kind of a setup against a tree line, and we came under some pretty heavy fire. And I remember going up to the front line, and one of the guys that carried our machine gun, he was a black guy, real big, muscular, like a football player kind of guy, and he got shot right through the arm. And in training, you put the bandage on the arm, you know, to stop the bleeding, and then tie it up tight like a tourniquet to hold it. Well, I remember trying to tighten that up, and I felt like if I tightened up, I was going to cut his arm off, because it shattered his bone in there. I don't know what happened to the guy, but they took him off, and hopefully he still has his arm.
Was it hard for you after Vietnam? I mean, did you talk about it at all? Or, I mean, was it, some of the guys I've talked to didn't talk about it for 40 years. I mean,
that's what seems funny to me. And I mentioned, I think, on the phone that Branson reunion those guys went to, and they're all drugged out and miserable, and they can't sleep. And to me, well, when I was in Fort Lewis, it was a pretty good example. We were in a class, and I was joking and laughing with some other guy, and I remember the instructor stopped the class. And he said, well, forget it. He said, there's guys like you who are going to go in there and laugh and joke their way, and they'll probably make it out of Vietnam alive. And so we did that. I had a friend there. I remember one time we came into some landing zone and we're getting shot at, so we started firing. It's like, hey, I finished my magazine before you finished yours, you know, stuff like that. We joked our way through it, and I think that helped get through.
Can you tell me about some of the patrols up and down the Mekong Delta? What that consisted of? How long it lasted? Was it the uncertainty of what's happening, or was there any, you know, just kind of take me through one of those patrols.
Yeah, well, we did a couple things. There was 3 battalions there in that Riverine force, and so you had 2 battalions in the field and 1 in Dong Tam, which was our base camp on the ground, and they were just there pretty much. So you're like 2 months in the field and a month back in Dong Tam. But we would typically go out either on a boat or helicopter and start walking, you know, looking to see what we could find, see if, you know, anybody's out there or any signs of the enemy out there and that kind of thing. And, you know, sometimes it was heavy jungle, sometimes it was in rice paddies. You know, sometimes nothing would happen. I know once we went out, they said we're going to go in 150 clicks, check something out and come back in, and we went in there, got under fire, and went out there for like 18 days. So, I used to smoke then too, and I remember, you know, you usually take enough cigarettes to last you however long you think you're going to be, and I took like 1 pack. Of course, that was gone after the 18 days, and I remember when they finally took us out of there, I came in the helicopter, and the door gunner gave me a Pell Mell, which is a non-filter cigarette. It was the best cigarette I ever had.
So You fighting the Viet Cong, or did you say the North Vietnamese?
A little bit of both, mostly probably Viet Cong more so, but that one incident I described in the helicopter was, they said that was definitely a regiment of North Vietnamese.
Was there a harder thing for you to do during your tour, or was there a more difficult situation that you encountered over there that you can remember?
No, I don't think so. To me, it was kind of like being on a team, like a football team, and I wanted to excel. And I went over there as a Spec 4 and got my sergeant stripes, and I felt pretty proud about that.
So were you in command over a platoon or?
A squad, yeah. But we did a little bit of all of it. You know, I walked point, I did listening post, all that kind of stuff is what you do when you're over there.
And did you lose men in that squad?
Well, like I said, you never know for sure because they sometimes get wounded and they get dusted off, and you don't, you know, they get sent to Japan or someplace, and you never hear the outcome for sure. I didn't see anybody actually, you know, get killed right on the spot. We did have a guy. There was always a rivalry between the Army and the Navy, and the Navy guys ran those ships. And one time, trying to dock the thing on the shore, the ramp got on top of one of the guys and drowned him, and so we all hated the Navy for that. One of those things.
I'm trying to picture this scene of the Mekong Delta. Is it like the bayou? I mean, you said Louisiana. Is it?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Like a swampland?
Yeah, swampy. In fact, I was out to the field for a while because I got some kind of disease. We always had to, when we came in on the ships, we had to take our shoes off and wear flip-flops all the time because of the foot disease that you could get. I did get my leg infected once, and I had a scar there for a long time, just from that water that you're wading in all the time. So you're wet all the time. And in fact, we used to come in, they have a pontoon beside the ship, and they come in and they hose us down with fire hoses because they're usually covered in mud by the time we got back in. They always served us Budweiser beer, which I learned to hate because in those days it was in steel cans and always had rust on it. I always hated that.
Tell me just a little bit about the Huey helicopters. I'm assuming that's what you flew.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the Huey in Vietnam, and you, again, your personal experience with them.
Yeah, well, our purpose was to move troops into combat zone. Like I said, the Eagle flights with 10 choppers and then later on the 5 choppers. And they were basically equipped with M60 machine guns in the door with the door gunners. And then some of those Cobra ships were used as protection for us, you know, the gunships, which were loaded with everything you can imagine. It's amazing the firepower some of those things have. That one time we were coming back to our ships and the people on the ships thought that was the enemy, and so they started shooting at us. And in the movies, you know, you always see the cops get behind a car door or get behind a tree. Those bullets will go right through a tree. I've seen it happen. So, it's pretty powerful stuff.
You know, just I guess the combat of what you guys experience is intriguing to me. The Huey being used as a medevac, a dust off. Were you ever assisting in any of that, or just seeing it from a distance, or did you ever have to put anybody on a Huey that was wounded? Or
yeah, we did that when somebody got wounded. If we could get them in there, sometimes it's hard to get them in if they were under fire. But those guys are pretty brave too. Come in and even under fire sometimes and get people out of there. But
is there a sound to combat? I mean, I know you said it was sniper fire, but still combat. I mean, is there a sound to combat? What does it sound like? Or
yeah, well, I mean, it's different than the movie, certainly. You hear a bullet fly over your head, there's a little click, kind of a pop sound to it that sounds like a BB gun or something, but once you recognize it, you know to get down from it. You know, of course, we blew up a lot of hand grenades and stuff like that.
how close did you get to the enemy? Was it like you and I, or was it always a distance thing, or could you?
Most of the time it was a distance. I was just recalling one time we got off the helicopters, we were getting sniper fire from a wood line, and we did what classical military, we went online and just started opening fire in this wood line. And turned out it was one guy, one Viet Cong guy, and he went into one of those holes in the ground, and he wouldn't come. We tried to get him to come out, and he wouldn't come out, so we threw a grenade in there, which they go in and kind of make an L shape, so you actually don't get the full impact. But he came out of there real fast after that. But I think he probably blew his eardrums out because he was screaming his head off. But he wasn't injured other than that, other than the sound or the concussion probably bothered him.
Now, did you tell me you got 2 air medals?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what they are and why you got them?
Well, you get them. I don't remember how many flights we made, but basically they're for 25 flights over hostile territory. So,
Helicopter flights?
yeah, Eagle flights.
So what's
basically.
it like flying in a helicopter? I mean, I know it's not like the movies, you know, with the music and all, the Creedence Clearwater and you know, and going into battle or whatever. But I mean, was it fun? Was it a rush?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's pretty neat because when you're in the Delta, I mean, it's nothing but mud and eels and whatever, snakes and all this kind of stuff. But when you go up in the air, you know, a helicopter, I don't know if you've been in a helicopter, but it's a very smooth, light liftoff, and you're sitting down, everything looks so green and all the palm trees, and, you know, guys are sitting on the edge with their feet hanging out on the skids and flipping each other the bird and everything like this.
So I've never heard that.
Okay. But, you know, of course, once you come down, you're going, you know, what are we getting into? And most of the time, like I said, there wasn't a lot happening because I think maybe the colonel may have been right that 10 helicopters coming in is going to scare most people away, but apparently 5 didn't scare them.
Tell me about, again, a lot of this is, you hear things, but was there a lot of drug usage in Vietnam to your knowledge? And, you know, you hear things, so did you experience that, or was it available? I hear it grew in the country and all things like that. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny because I hear so many stories. I think when I was over there was like 525,000 troops, but 90,000 were in what they call on the front line. So everybody, these guys had nothing to do. I remember one time seeing a Foot Locker completely full of marijuana that some guys had when we were on the base camp, and there was some marijuana use. I didn't see any kind of heavy drugs, although I've heard a lot about that. I didn't really see that. And another thing that I found too is even though you hear the stories of burning down houses and beating prisoners and stuff like that, and we were under pretty heavy discipline. The commanders were like honest, you know, don't do this, and, you know, don't set fire to things. One guy even wanted us to shine our boots, which that was a pretty big order in that area. But discipline was pretty strong, I think.
I'm going to jump ahead for a second here and ask you a question. I mean, you know, being a veteran of Vietnam and fighting for your country, you know, what does freedom mean to you, Chuck?
Well, I think it's what we have in this country to pretty much do what we want to, and you know, I wouldn't want to live anyplace else. You know, a lot of people do things I don't like, but on the other hand, you know, that's what we have the country for, to give people the opportunity to do anything they want to, pretty much.
What about the price for freedom? What would you tell a young person today about who takes their freedoms for granted? What would you tell them about the price for freedom?
Well, you know, if they want to keep it, they got to stand up for it. I felt like I did.
They say freedom's not free.
Sometimes you don't know exactly what you're fighting for, but on the other hand, I don't want people coming into this country and taking the place over either. So.
Have you been to the Vietnam Wall in D.C.?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember the first time you went? Why did you go, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I always heard about it, and a few years ago I used to go to Washington, D.C. quite a bit in my job, and so I remember walking over there, and from the street you can't see it because it's actually, the ground is level and it drops down, and so you don't see it, and then when you come around and see it, it's pretty eerie kind of situation. And luckily my name wasn't on the list.
Did you find names of people that you knew in Vietnam, or?
Not really. I didn't make a lot of friends. I made friends there, but I didn't follow them after the war. So I didn't really remember any names or recognize any names there.
Are there sights, sounds, or smells today that bring back Vietnam?
Oh, not too much. I guess I think about it when I see something on TV or, you know, see reports from Iraq and see the guys in combat, stuff like that. But it's not something that I try to block out or anything. I mean, just part of my life, something happened, like going to college or whatever. The Army was pretty good to me. I got out and finished my education and got a master's degree and have been pretty successful in business with it. So I've got my first house to the GI Bill. I mean, it paid off really well for me.
What do you think our country should remember about Vietnam?
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think that they thought we couldn't win the war. And I think about I mentioned Dongtown, the base camp. I wasn't there when it was first started, but basically nothing but a rice paddy. And when I left, the place was like a city. I mean, it had paved streets and nightclubs and buildings all over the place and heavily reinforced. And I think if we would have been given the opportunity to continue without some of the rules that we had, I think we could have stabilized the country. And in fact, I think it was fairly stable when I left, and then I think after that we kind of started pulling out and things just kind of got overrun. And of course the country had turned against it at that point. So I always felt like we could have won it.
And you read the article in the paper here last week, and you called me.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you feel like you wanted to talk to me today?
Well, I don't know. I sometimes hear so many stories about, most of them are negative stories. And I always felt like that doesn't sound like the place I went to exactly. And I thought, well, I'd like to at least get my 2 cents in on it. You see all the guys that are so miserable and have horrible lives, or they're homeless and stuff like that. And I said, I never saw it that way. I did what I had to. I got out. Like I said, I got to go back and finish college, and then I went on and got an MBA, and have been pretty successful in business. And I relate a lot of that to the Army.
One thing that's, I think, affected a lot of the vets coming home was that they didn't really have a homecoming, so to speak. Did you experience that also, where it was maybe a negative environment versus like what you saw in World War II, or even today it's a lot better?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Of course, I came from a fairly small town, Medford, Oregon, and I read something about guys that had to ride in buses with the windows blacked out so they wouldn't get pelted with stuff and screamed at. But when I came home, I was the only guy on the plane. My parents and relatives were waiting for me, and they were all glad to see me, and I was glad to be home. So there was no real negative connotation to that. I guess, the other thing is, when I got out, I was motivated. I wanted to do things. I'd save money I used to save out of I think I wanted to get $100 a month and $60 combat pay or something like that when I was over there. But we didn't need any money because the Army's paying for the meals. I think I kept $10 out of my check for cigarettes and a case of Coke or something like that. And I put the rest in the savings, and I came out and I bought a brand new car when I got out of the Army. In fact, it was a Z28 Camaro, which is worth $250,000 now, and it cost me $3,500 then. But, I was ready to go, and I goofed off for the summer. I went right back to college. There was no downtime for me.
You see any similarities today versus Vietnam? I mean, I'm hearing things like it's like it was, you hear comparisons about what's happening today versus, back in Vietnam. Do you see that, or?
Oh, yeah, I think the same thing's kind of happening. I think it's gone on so long that people are getting disappointed, discouraged about it, and all they hear about is all the guys getting wounded, although Vietnam, there's a whole lot more than 3,000 got wounded over there and killed. And it's hard it's one thing, I don't know if I think people have forgotten when we rolled into Baghdad, there was very little resistance. I mean, they were running, and now when you're trying to maintain the place, it's not really a war anymore, so you're basically a target over there. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I think that's kind of where we got to in Vietnam a little bit. It's like, how do we maintain now that we're here? And yeah, so there's a lot of similarities there. And of course, every time you see somebody come home wounded or you hear it on the reports, everybody's getting very discouraged about it. So, but I think there's a lot of similarities in there that, we got the firepower to take these guys out if we wanted to. I heard there's something in the Senate about we're going to have the Iraqi people are going to do the fighting, and we're only supposed to fight if we're engaged. And it's like, you can't go in there. Somebody's shooting at you, you got to shoot them back. And it's just, you can't wait for somebody else to do something.
So when you left Vietnam, was it a happy moment? Did you turn back and look at everybody and wave goodbye, or was it just, I'm glad to get out of here?
It was a great moment. I remember I mentioned the two scenes of the new guys coming in and the old guys waiting for the plane. It was at night, and we got on the plane, and it was very quiet, and the plane finally starts to roll down the runway, and it was still quiet until that thing lifted off the ground. And like, yes! Everybody cheered. And I remember then we flew into Anchorage, I think, was a stop. And they let us get off the plane there. And of course, everybody ran to the bar, and people were sitting around in suits and ties. And here's these guys coming in at worn out fatigues. Somebody said, I remember somebody saying, drinks are $2 a piece. And I don't give a damn, give me a double. So we raided that place pretty much, and then flew on in, went into Oakland to, you know.
Do you feel Vietnam changed you as a person? I mean, in your later years, I mean, or were you the same? Were you better? Were you worse coming out of Vietnam and having experienced that?
I think it was better because I kind of relate to the whole Army experience, because I was a junior in college at the University of Oregon, and not basically flunking out, goofing off a lot, not going to class. And I don't know where I would have been if I hadn't gone in the Army. When I went in the Army, it kind of took that away, and I came out a lot smarter, I think, and a lot more mature at that point. And so when I went back, I remember going back to graduate school and I had to take a calculus class. It was a freshman class, so they didn't have it from before. And the freshmen were just dying, you know, they're going, we can't get it. And I found out if you go to class and you do the homework, you study, I got an A, and it was the simplest class I ever took, because I finally figured it out. If you go to class and you do a little studying, you can get by. So I felt like, you know, I think I was kind of going nowhere as a junior in college. And when I came out, I had a much more focus on where I needed to go, and I went back and finished college.
I don't know the degree of combat, and I'm not going to go any deeper than this, but you know, some of the guys went through some pretty horrendous experiences in combat to whatever level or depth, but and they said they became a different person. I don't know if you experienced that or you know, if you kill people or whatever, but do you think it changed at all like that in those moments, or was it just your training that kicked in and then it was just over with?
Yeah, I don't think I got any kind of life-changing experiences. I think it made me feel more confident in myself. I think you know, you think about, I don't know if I could shoot somebody in the face, because you don't go through that in combat. Typically, it's somebody over there that's shooting at you, and the first time you find out some of your buddies got killed, it's like a football game or something. So, well, we got to get those guys now because what they did to us. And it's not like I'm going to go out and shoot an innocent person, but when you see that person as the enemy, then it's a whole lot different, a very different story.
And that's instilled in you in training, basically.
Yeah.
Best they can, I mean.
Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody, but.
Are you proud that you're a Vietnam veteran?
Yeah.
Do people thank you for your service?
Occasionally. Most of them don't really know. I guess typically you see a Vietnam veteran and he's in a wheelchair and he's got one of these VFW caps on, and somehow I don't fit the mold, so people don't seem to think of me that light, I guess. I don't know.
That's okay. I mean, I see two sides of the vets, and I appreciate what you're sharing today. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing that I ask all the veterans to do at the end of my interviews. From where you're seated, if it's okay, when I tell you, can you give me a salute into the camera?
Sure.
Okay, from where you're seated for the camera's sake. Okay, sir, right into the camera. Great, thank you.